The moment you become rich is the moment you must become invisible. That statement will offend the weak. The average man believes wealth is meant to be flaunted: gold chains, luxury cars, beachfront selfies. But Machiavelli would smirk at such foolishness, because he knew something most people never learn until it's too late. Power is safest when it's unseen. We live in an age of exposure, an age where people broadcast their victories before they've even secured them. Every win becomes content. Every move becomes a performance. But here's the paradox. The more the world sees you, the more the world wants a piece of you. Envy multiplies faster than wealth ever can. The public eye doesn't celebrate success, it hunts it. I learned this truth the hard way. When I made my first 6 figures, I told everyone: friends, colleagues, even family. I thought I was inspiring them. Instead, I awakened something darker. Friends turned cold. Family started hinting for help. Colleagues looked at me not as an equal, but as a threat. Within months, I found myself isolated. It was as if my success had put a target on my back. And that's when I realized wealth doesn't just attract opportunity, it attracts opposition. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "He who builds his power openly builds his own destruction." Look at history. Caesar was stabbed by those he called allies. Napoleon's own generals plotted behind his back. Even Churchill, the Lion of Britain, faced political exile before his resurgence. The lesson? Power creates resentment in the mediocre. And resentment, left unchecked, turns into sabotage. Imagine a fortress. Every window you open, every person you let peer inside your success becomes a potential breach. Your wealth, your strategy, your vision, these are state secrets. Once revealed, they are vulnerable to corruption. As Sun Tzu warned, appear weak when you are strong. In modern terms, this means, when you rise, hide your ascent. Why does this matter? Because most people want validation more than they want victory. They seek applause instead of advantage. They confuse visibility with significance. But here's the reality. True power operates in silence. The richest families in history, the Rothschilds, the Medici, moved behind curtains. They understood that the moment you let the world know what you have, the world begins to calculate how to take it from you. So, let's ask the uncomfortable questions. When you earn, who truly benefits from sharing you or their curiosity? When you post your success online, what are you really seeking influence or approval for? Are you building an empire or are you building an audience? Time is running out for those who equate attention with achievement. The powerful know that secrecy is a shield and exposure is suicide. As we move deeper, I'll show you how this principle isn't paranoia, it's strategy. You'll see why history's most cunning minds mastered discretion as a weapon. But before we dive into the tactics, I need to tell you the full story of the betrayal that taught me to vanish. Because until you feel what it's like to be hunted for your success, you'll never understand why silence is the ultimate status symbol. The worst betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the people who clap the loudest when you win. When I first began to rise, not astronomically, but noticeably, I made the fatal mistake of believing my circle would rise with me. I thought wealth would amplify loyalty. Instead, it exposed envy. I still remember the night it began. A dinner with old friends. The wine was flowing, laughter echoing off the restaurant walls. I casually mentioned a business milestone I was proud of. The mood shifted like a battlefield fog. Smiles stiffened. One friend made a joke about me getting too big for the group. Another asked how much I was really making. At the time, I laughed it off. But the silence afterward told me everything. They weren't celebrating my victory. They were recalculating their place in my story. Within weeks, subtle sabotage began. Leaked ideas, broken trust. A partner I once mentored tried to undercut me in a deal. I felt surrounded by friendly faces armed with hidden knives. And here's the cruel irony. I created those enemies by sharing too much, too soon. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He warned that generosity, when publicized, breeds dependence and jealousy. Caesar faced it when his closest allies, Cassius and Brutus, turned on him. They didn't envy his power. They envied the visibility of his power. Napoleon's marshals whispered that he'd become untouchable, and soon after, those whispers became plots. Power not yet consolidated must remain in the shadows, or it will be strangled before maturity. I learned that wealth is not just about money, it's about perception management. The moment you declare success, people stop seeing your humanity and start measuring your worth. They begin to think, if he can, why not me? And when they can't, resentment festers. There's a scene I replay often in my mind, a confrontation with a friend I trusted. He told me, "You've changed." I responded, "No, you just never expected me to evolve." That was the day I realized something Machiavelli himself would approve of. Growth is betrayal to the stagnant. If you've ever been resented for improving your life, if your ambition has ever been called arrogance, you've felt this same sting. The people closest to you often have the hardest time accepting your transformation because it threatens their comfort. So, I withdrew. I stopped announcing. I started moving silently, and the results were immediate. My projects grew faster. My peace returned. The energy I once wasted defending my success went into deepening it. Silence became my sword discretion, my armor. You see, the true Machiavellian never seeks validation. He seeks leverage. He doesn't tell the world he's building an empire. He simply builds it and lets the world find out too late. Ask yourself, who in your circle truly celebrates your wins and who tolerates them? How many dreams have you killed by exposing them too early? Are you sharing to inspire, or are you sharing to feel significant? Because every revelation is a risk. Every secret told is a weapon handed to another. As we move forward, I'll show you how this philosophy isn't just emotional protection, it's strategic warfare. History has proven that secrecy isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The power that is spoken of is already half lost. Machiavelli never glorified silence for moral reasons. He praised it because it worked. In the brutal chessboard of Renaissance politics, visibility was vulnerability. To speak of your plans was to invite sabotage. To reveal your strength was to give your enemies a map of your weaknesses. Let's begin with Florence, the city that birthed both genius and treachery. In the early 1500s, Niccolò Machiavelli served as an advisor to the Florentine Republic, watching from the shadows as rulers rose and fell. He noticed something most never do. The loudest men were the first to be executed. The Medici family, however, understood the inverse law, that wealth, when hidden, becomes power in its purest form. They funded wars, controlled banks, and shaped popes, all while maintaining an image of modest civility. They were masters of illusion, poor in public, invincible in private. Machiavelli's The Prince was not a book about morality. It was a field manual for survival. He taught that rulers must appear virtuous, even when acting in secrecy. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, he wrote. Meaning, perception wins wars long before armies do. A ruler's silence creates mystique. A commoner's transparency invites manipulation. Look, centuries later, Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who understood Machiavelli better than most scholars ever will. Napoleon never revealed his full strategy. He fed the world misinformation, let rumors shape his legend, and when his enemies acted on false intelligence, he crushed them. His wealth was not gold, it was secrecy. His empire thrived on controlled chaos, the art of showing little and knowing much. Contrast that with the downfall of others. Julius Caesar was warned multiple times that his power was too visible. He ignored the counsel. His generosity became a spectacle, his ambition too public. The Senate struck him down, not because he was unworthy, but because his success was too loud. And yet, we make the same mistake today. We parade our achievements through social media, digital town squares filled with strangers and spies. We announce victories before they are real. We forget that every status update is a scroll handed to the mob, inviting judgment, envy, and calculation. Sun Tzu's Art of War complements Machiavelli perfectly. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable at night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. The thunderbolt doesn't announce itself. It strikes once, decisively. That's how kings operate. That's how real power is maintained. Think of it this way. The man who speaks of his wealth seeks approval. The man who conceals it commands control. One plays defense against gossip. The other plays offense against time. Ask yourself, would Alexander the Great have conquered Persia if he'd posted his war plans in the town square? Would the Medici have ruled Europe if they'd bragged about their influence? Why, then, do you believe that revealing your success will make you stronger? While others crave recognition, the Machiavellian learns to weaponize mystery. Silence isn't absent from its strategy. It's the difference between being known and being respected. As we move forward, we'll shift from philosophy to practice. You'll see how secrecy becomes a system, a way to protect wealth, reputation, and legacy. Silence isn't emptiness, it's leverage. Modern science now confirms what Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, and the Medici knew instinctively. The less you reveal, the more control you possess. What philosophers framed as cunning, psychologists today describe as information asymmetry, a structural advantage where one side knows more than the other. And in the battlefield of modern life, business, social dynamics, even relationships, this asymmetry is gold. Let's strip away the romanticism for a moment and go straight to the evidence. A 2017 study from the Journal of Experimental Psychology revealed that people who maintain privacy around their personal goals are statistically more likely to achieve them. Why? Because announcing goals gives a false sense of completion. It tricks the brain into believing the work is already done. In other words, exposure kills execution. When you tell the world about your wealth, your next move, or your success, you create two problems: internal complacency and external interference. You lose hunger and you invite envy. Both are fatal. Envy, particularly, is not a petty emotion. It's a strategic threat. Neuroscience studies show that envy activates the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. When someone sees your success, they feel attacked. They don't process your triumph as inspiration. They process it as humiliation. That's why Caesar fell. That's why successful entrepreneurs lose childhood friends. It's not moral failure, it's neurological inevitability. Machiavelli's world had daggers and poison. Ours has rumors, screenshots, and reputation warfare. Yet the principle remains identical. Visibility multiplies vulnerability. Let me give you a personal example. After I withdrew from public validation and started operating quietly, something strange happened. People began to overestimate me. The less I shared, the more mysterious I became. Deals came easier. Invitations increased. I wasn't chasing opportunities anymore. I was attracting them. That's when I realized scarcity amplifies value. The less people know, the more they assume. Think about the brands that dominate the world: Apple, Tesla, Rolex. Their mystique isn't built on transparency. It's built on controlled secrecy. Apple guards its product designs like military intelligence. Rolex never discounts, never floods the market. They understand what most individuals don't. That mystery multiplies perceived worth. Now ask yourself, how much have you weakened your influence by oversharing your victories? How many of your future opportunities died in the spotlight before they were even born? What could happen if you built your next move in total silence? No announcement, no proof, no validation. While others hesitate, you must cultivate strategic invisibility. Build what I call a fortress of silence, a mental stronghold where your plans mature before they're exposed. 3 rules govern it. Control the flow of information. Share on a need-to-know basis, not a desire-to-tell basis. Delay public disclosure. Reveal only after results are irreversible. Use curiosity as currency. The less they know, the more they want to know. History rewards those who understand this game. Napoleon's silence before battle wasn't hesitation. It was dominance disguised as calm. The Medici's quiet operations weren't cowardice. They were controlled. So, while the modern world screams for attention, you will move like a shadow, silent, deliberate, and dangerous. In an age of exposure, invisibility is the new luxury. We live in a digital coliseum, a place where everyone performs, everyone watches, and everyone bleeds under the spotlight. But the ones who truly win, the ones who build real wealth, power, and legacy, are those who step out of the arena and learn to operate behind the curtain. Machiavelli's laws didn't die with the Renaissance. They've evolved into modern psychology, behavioral economics, and digital strategy. Let's look at the data. In a 2021 Harvard Business Review analysis, CEOs who maintained low public profiles were statistically more resilient during crises. Their silence preserved flexibility. Without public declarations, they could pivot without losing face. Meanwhile, high-visibility leaders who constantly posted, announced, and signaling were punished by perception. Their reputations became cages. They could no longer maneuver freely. That's not freedom, that's performative imprisonment. Now, extend that to your own life. Every time you post your progress, you're writing your enemies a field manual. You're revealing where you are, how far you've gone, and what resources you control. The Machiavellian mind doesn't play like that. He creates what I call information fog, a deliberate distortion that conceals his direction until it's too late to stop him. I learned this while working with an investor who built a 7-figure empire quietly. No flashy cars, no luxury watch. He lived in a modest home and dressed like an average man. Yet, in his phone sat the contact list of billionaires. When I asked why he hid his success, he smiled and said, "Power dies in the open." He wasn't poor, he was protected. Compare him to those who broadcast every move, the self-proclaimed moguls with rented Lamborghinis and leased confidence. They attract attention, yes, but attention brings scrutiny, and scrutiny brings collapse. Their wealth becomes performance art. Their validation becomes an addiction. And when the spotlight shifts, they're exposed as hollow statues, all shine. No structure. Machiavelli warned, "He who depends on fortune is lost." In modern terms, that means if your power depends on public perception, you are already weak. True wealth is the kind that no one can steal because no one knows it exists. Look at the dynasties of our time, families like the Waltons or Kochs. You rarely see their names trending. You rarely see their faces on camera. Yet they move nations, fund policies, and shape economies. While influencers chase algorithms, true power brokers master obscurity. They understand a principle. The public never will control the narrative by controlling your visibility. Here's your modern warfare guide. 3 tactical applications of silence. Digital ghosting. Limit your digital footprint. Delete what doesn't serve your leverage. The less data available, the less predictable you become. Strategic ambiguity. When asked about your success, be vague. I'm working on something. Let curiosity do the heavy lifting. Invisible expansion. Grow your wealth through layers of trusts, holdings, partnerships. The less it traces back to you, the more untouchable you are. Ask yourself, how much of your ambition have you leaked to people who secretly want you to fail? Are you building empires or feeding algorithms? If your success disappeared from public view tomorrow, would it still exist or would it crumble? As we move deeper, you'll learn how to face the inner resistance, the craving for validation, the fear of obscurity. Because conquering others begins with conquering that need within yourself. The greatest battle you'll ever fight is not against others, it's against your own need to be seen. Before you master secrecy, you must confront a deeper enemy, the addiction to validation. In the modern world, exposure is marketed as empowerment. Be authentic, they say. Share your journey. But the truth is, more brutal exposure is enslavement disguised as freedom. The moment you need others to see your success, you've given them power over it. I learned this when I tried to disappear. I stopped posting, stopped updating, stopped explaining myself. At first, it felt like withdrawal. I'd built a life around applause. The silence was deafening. No more likes, no more congratulations. Just the raw echo of my own thoughts. But then, something unexpected happened. Without the noise, I could finally hear my own ambition again. Most people won't make it to that stage. They crave attention more than achievement. They'd rather be admired than effective. But understand this: every king, conqueror, and strategist who ever built an empire mastered restraint. Napoleon didn't broadcast his next campaign. He let Europe wake up to its defeat. Churchill, exiled and humiliated for years, never begged for recognition. He waited, prepared, and when the world was on fire, he returned as its savior. Machiavelli himself knew what exile felt like. After losing his political position in 1512, he was tortured, imprisoned, and cast out. But in his isolation, he wrote The Prince, the manual that would outlive every one of his enemies. The man who was silenced ended up shaping the philosophy of power for centuries. That's not weakness, that's strategic resurrection. So why do we resist silence? Because silence forces accountability. You can't hide behind applause. You can't outsource motivation to admiration. When you stop performing, you must produce. And that's terrifying for those who confuse activity with progress. Psychologically, this resistance is rooted in dopamine, the same chemical that drives addiction. Every time someone acknowledges your success, you get a hit. It feels good, so you chase it. But dopamine doesn't build empires. Discipline does. The Machiavellian mind learns to redirect that energy inward to trade external validation for internal velocity. Here's how you overcome this resistance. Silence detox. Go 30 days without posting about any personal win or project. Notice the discomfort. Sit in it. It's withdrawal from dependence. Circle audit. Identify who demands access to your progress. If someone's curiosity outweighs their contribution, cut them off. Invisible victories. Reward yourself privately. Train your brain to find satisfaction in progress, not applause. These steps are small but revolutionary, because the moment you can move without recognition, you become unstoppable. You operate in a dimension where others can't compete, where your moves are unseen until they're irreversible. Ask yourself, what would you build if you didn't need anyone to clap for it? How much faster could you grow if no one's opinion slowed you down? Are you loyal to your purpose or to the image of success you've created for others? Most will never answer those questions honestly, but if you can, you're already separating yourself from the masses. As we advance, I'll show you how to weaponize this discipline and how to turn stealth into a structured system that multiplies results. The true strategist doesn't hide because he fears discovery. He hides because he plans domination. Now that you understand why secrecy is strength, it's time to turn philosophy into architecture. This is where the Machiavellian framework becomes practical. The art of constructing a life that radiates quiet power. You don't just keep secrets, you build systems that make secrecy your natural state. Let's begin with the first rule of advanced power. Structure silence into your lifestyle. Silence isn't passive, it's a method of control. The most powerful people on earth, from political dynasties to shadow financiers, live behind walls of intentional ambiguity. They aren't invisible by accident. They've engineered opacity. Step 1. The triad of hidden wealth. Every modern Machiavellian protects 3 fronts: financial, informational, and emotional. Financial secrecy means building layers of trusts, shell companies, and decentralized holdings. The more complex your structure, the harder it is to attack. The Medici family mastered this through banking networks that masked ownership. Today, digital entrepreneurs do it through legal veils and diversified streams. Informational secrecy means limiting access. Only 2 kinds of people deserve to know your next move: those who help execute it, and those who can destroy it, because you must control both. Emotional secrecy means never revealing what drives or disturbs you. Once they know your triggers, they can control your tempo. Machiavelli called it prudenza, self-governance, under pressure. Step 2. The circle of shadows. You must establish what I call your circle of shadows, 3 to 5 people bound not by friendship, but by strategic alignment. Each should provide unique intelligence. One for finance, one for legal, one for opportunity scouting. No one knows everything. Each holds a fragment. This keeps loyalty tight and betrayal expensive. Remember Caesar's flaw. Too many knew too much. Napoleon had his marshals, but each only saw part of his vision. The genius was in compartmentalization. That's why no coup succeeded until his empire collapsed under external invasion. You must replicate that model. Fragmented visibility, unified command. Step 3. Controlled revelation. Never reveal from weakness, only reveal to manipulate. When you speak of success, let it serve a purpose. Influence, negotiation, or recruitment. Every statement should be a move, not a confession. The world doesn't need your transparency, it needs your narrative. Example, J.P. Morgan built a reputation as a benevolent banker, while in secret he controlled the U.S. financial system during the 1907 panic. His public humility made his private dominance possible. Step 4. The disappearing act disappears periodically. Absence builds myth. Power grows in the voids you leave behind. Churchill vanished into silence before re-emerging to lead Britain. Elon Musk goes silent before launching revolutions. Every empire builder uses retreat as strategy. It allows recalibration, renewal, and re-entry with amplified impact. Ask yourself, what systems can you create today to conceal your true scale? Who currently has access to knowledge they haven't earned? When was the last time your silence made people wonder instead of forget? While others broadcast every thought, you will become deliberate, surgical, unseen. This is how Machiavellian wealth survives not in fame, but in fortified invisibility. As we enter the final section, I'll give you the last challenge. The internal transformation required to sustain this power. Because secrecy is not a tactic, it's an identity. If they know your next move, you're not a strategist, you're entertainment. By now, you understand the core of this Machiavellian creed. The less they know, the safer you are. The quieter you move, the more unstoppable you become. But understanding isn't enough. Knowledge without transformation is impotence. The question is, will you live it? Because make no mistake, silence is not natural. It's not comfortable. It's forged through war against your ego. You've been conditioned to share, to prove, to parade. Society tells you that validation is love, that exposure is strength. But look around. Those who live to be seen are devoured by those who learn to vanish. The masses want followers. You want leverage. They build audiences. You build fortresses. They chase applause. You chase control. Machiavelli wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." That's not cynicism. It's realism. Times change. Strategies must adapt. If you want to survive in the jungle of modern power, you must unlearn the behaviors that make prey visible. Let me tell you the final story, the one that cemented this truth in my bones. A few years ago, a man I once mentored approached me at an event. He was dressed to impress in a designer suit, loud watch, and fake confidence. He bragged about his deals, his followers, his press features. For 10 minutes, he talked. For 10 minutes, I listened. When he finally paused, he asked, "What are you working on these days?" I smiled and said, "Just something quiet." He laughed. I didn't. 2 years later, he was bankrupt and publicly humiliated in the same media he once worshipped. His empire existed only as long as people were watching. Mine had grown unseen, quiet partnerships, silent investments, private wins. When the storm hit, he had fame. I had a foundation. This is your crossroads. You can continue feeding the crowd or start feeding your destiny. Here's your final challenge. The Machiavellian Pact. Commit to 90 days of strategic silence. Announce nothing, build everything. Let your work speak only when complete. Audit your exposure. Delete the unnecessary. Remove access from those who drain more than they contribute. Rebuild your identity in the dark. Train your mind to crave progress, not praise. Rewire your reward system from applause to achievement. When you master this, something powerful happens. People start to fear what you're not saying. They sense movement, but can't track it. They feel your influence, but can't measure it. That's when you've crossed from ordinary ambition into true Machiavellian power, the ability to shape outcomes invisibly. Ask yourself, do you want to be remembered, or do you want to be obeyed? Do you want followers, or do you want influence? When you're gone, will they know your story, or will they live inside the world you quietly built? As we speak, most people are broadcasting their every move to an audience that doesn't care. But you're done performing. You're done seeking permission. From this moment forward, you operate like a shadow in daylight, present but unseen, influential but untouchable. Your wealth, your wisdom, your power belong to you and no one else. Guard them, conceal them, multiply them, because when you get rich, you tell no one.